Well, what do you know? Once again, there's more to a Marvel Disney Plus episode than meets the eye. We have a surprising amount of stuff to go over, including a breakdown of all the trick arrows. We gotta do that. And that action sequence actually is a lot cooler than it is once again at first glance. When you go through it, it has some pretty cool stuff in it. All right, but we have to start with the fact that we have Kingpin's hand. I repeat, Kingpin's hand. And his chuckle, like an evil Pillsbury doughboy. The question is, though, will this show reveal him piece by piece for the remaining 3 episodes, saving the full reveal for the finale? Or will he come out to play a little earlier? I hope a little earlier, because it's definitely Kingpin. Why make us wait? And they still have to show us Yelena. So let's bring back Vincent D'Onofrio. I am excited. On that note, I have a theory about Maya, aka Echo's uncle. Now, this is a theory, but I think it's probably true. So if you don't want to have a spoiler, a potential spoiler, I'll put a link down below where you can skip over this theory I have. Because it was really bothering me. Because in the comics, Kingpin kills Maya's father. And they changed it here that it's Ronin, aka Clint, which really surprised me during the watch along. And I was thinking about it after I watched the episode, after I, logged off from watching with you. And I was like, how are they going to have Clint move forward as a heroic character if he killed, a member of the tracksuit mafia? Those guys, are low, mid-level criminals, right? Especially one as cool as Zahn McClarnon, who's being so wonderful to his daughter. I mean, I just don't know if there's any coming back from that. So I was like, you know what? Clint can't have killed him. So here's where it gets interesting. Anyone can put on that Ronin suit, as the comics established and as the show is establishing. Pretty smart when you think about it, right? This is one of those you look back and you go, oh, very well written. I mean, it would be better written if it was exciting all the way through, although some of you are having a grand time, which I'm so happy to hear that. I like this show, but it's still my least favorite of the shows so far. But, that still means it's really good. But anyway, anyone can put on the Ronin suit. So what if Kingpin said, hey, Ronin is an opportunity for me to have someone else dress up in a suit or a similar suit and take out Maya's father for Kingpin, right? And who do I think is in that suit? Well, I would bet it's Kazi, because that's a big character from the comics. How is it that he's just, Echo's sidekick? That makes absolutely no sense. He's an assassin in the original comics, and since he doesn't have time, I think, to go full clown with just 3 episodes left, maybe in the final episode he'll put on the clown look. He's like, me and Echo aren't friends anymore. Literal tear. But anyway, I think they're probably saving Kazi as a full-blown villain like that with a motif for Echo's own series, right? Where she goes after the people who are really responsible for her dad's death, Kingpin and Kazi, and the betrayal as Kazi is acting like her best friend. But he's not. That would really make it sting enough that she needed her own series. But she needs it just because, it's a backdoor into the world of Daredevil, which she'll probably have some help from, just like in the comics. Oh, it's all starting to come together. So that's my theory. We'll see what happens. The actress playing young Echo did a very nice job. Talk about sympathetic. She was adorable. And even Kingpin loves her. I mean, she's just so cute. And I love it. Well, although where has Echo been in all the Daredevil episodes? But anyway, I love that they incorporated Alaqua Cox's half prosthetic leg. That's awesome. Not just for the character, but that she has that, but I like how they had, again, she takes what could be perceived as a weakness and turns it into a strength, as she uses it as a shield to block Clint during their fight. I thought that was great. She's a very Marvel Netflixy character. Very Marvel Netflixy. I don't think she's had her big moment just yet. She looks cool, though. She looks very cool. But I liked her father calling her Little Dragon, a fierce creature who travels between 2 worlds. I liked that. Also, the handprint on her face, her father's death print, is also very important because that's the basis for her look in the comics. He gives her that handprint right over the front of her face in the comics, which is a more dramatic look, and I wish they'd gone for that here. I'd be like, Alaqua Cox will do that. I mean, who wouldn't want to do that? It's a cool look. I'd be like, is she just gonna have a handprint on the side of her face? Well, I guess so. But that's the look she'll probably eventually take on here as well. I mean, she has to. It's her calling card. It's what makes the character one of the main, visually what makes her really cool. And also Alaqua Cox's stare. She's got a very good stare. I'm like, oh, she means business. I like it. I like it a lot. All right, as for another big moment this episode, literally, is the Pym Arrow. I told you Pym Arrows were coming. I knew they were coming for episode 6, where I heard they were used, significantly. So to introduce them this early, although the show I think is good at planting seeds, like the Ronin suit and some other stuff, as you'll see, it's a slow burn, boy. It's a really slow burn. But anyway, I think to introduce them this early means they have a lot of cool stuff planned for them. Remember, Pym particles are go big and small, so it could be really exciting. Can he shoot himself with it? I want to know. I don't know if I would be nervous to do that. Now, the only bummer with the Pym Arrow here, in my opinion, don't worry, we're going to break all the arrows down later in the episode, but we got to talk about the Pym Arrow in its own section. The only bummer to me is that the show couldn't afford a wide shot of the arrow after it impaled the car in the bridge. I mean, you see this quick one, but it's a weak and cheap shot. I want a full shot from far away with the tail end of the arrow. Like when you see it hanging above the bridge, this super CGI, whatever. I didn't believe for a second that it really existed, but I liked the idea of it. That was enough. And I would have liked to have seen it like just sticking out of the bridge from like really far away. I mean, Marvel, you have Disney money. I don't know why we couldn't have gotten that. Also, how does one clean up after a giant Pym fight? I mean, the bridge has probably has substantial damage after that. The Vulture's like, hello. I wonder if I never really used Vulture after that wonderful introduction, which is frustrating. But anyway, I wonder if Pym Technologies has a side business, or I guess maybe they'd have to do it for free because they did make the mess of cleaning up their messes. And maybe other things as well with the practical application of Pym particles. We do know, after all, that they are already in the food business. I need to go to there. I love it. Maybe Pym particles wear off? Maybe that's it. Although that seems like that would be dangerous to me because, how would you time when they wear off? What if you needed them not to wear off? I think it would be better off just to clean up after yourselves. All right, so anyway, next week, we have a tease of we're getting Hawkeye versus Swordsman straight out of the comics. Oh, I love it. And I'm sure we'll discover that Jack is actually a stand-up guy who just looks like a mustache-twirling villain. He's like, I like to keep people on their toes. How long do you I think really Tony Dalton's like, I'm not shaving it off. That's speaking of a visual calling card, Echo has her handprint, Tony Dalton has his mustache. But anyway, Henry Cavill's like, I've been there, man. How long do you think it will take Clint to get his Ronin sword back? I'm guessing he will get it back immediately. Although Jack is supposed to be pretty good with the sword, and we'll finally see what he's capable of without holding back, like he was last week. And it's a good thing they have swords all over the house, right? It's like Chekhov's gun. You don't put swords all over a set if you don't plan to use them by the end of the evening, right? So to speak. I love it. I love it. That's really clever. We'll have to think of that going forward. If it's in a scene, they're going to use it. That's great. I just thought the swords were like a quirk. I love that they're going to use all those swords next week. That'll be a lot of fun. Also, look at this cool new graphic on the Disney Plus app for today's episode. It reminded me that Clint is getting a new suit with better branding. I mean, we've seen it before. I mean, the branding's still not great because you're like, oh yeah, that is a new suit. Ah, cool. It's like Lululemon, sponsored by Lululemon. But they make men's clothing. All right, so anyway, I guess Kate wins at the end of the day with getting him a better suit with better branding. I guess it looks like a compromise, right? And she gets an upgrade too with the same branding, right? And she and Clint become much more of a team this episode. In fact, aside from the Easter egg stuff, very few Easter eggs. This show needs more Easter eggs. And by the way, I also think this episode was hurt by showing most of the chase scene. Some of it was edited out, but they showed most of the chase scene on Disney Plus Day. It ruined a pretty cool long shot, which again, classic Marvel Netflix. But the choreography was and still is impressive. I like that it's a moving long take. To me, the coolest part of it is when they come out of the parking lot. And then they go into extensive green screening, which as many of you pointed out during the watch along, was often pretty obvious. But I liked coming out of the parking lot. I thought that was cool. Birdie and Birdie directed this episode, and I introduced Trin Tron, the producer of this show, and she said that it was their idea to do that long take to spice things up. And I think the head-on shots at the diner when Clint and Kate have like a heart-to-heart, and that by seeing them head-on, it really made you feel even more like you were part of the conversation instead of the usual angle looking in. Those were some very nice directing choices. So good for you, Birdie and Birdie. Very good. They could use more of that, but I'll take what they had. So the other great elements of this episode were once again the character moments for Clint and Kate, helped by them being played by two extraordinary actors, very personable actors. They are both clearly really competent, but also very, very kind. Isn't that great? That's unusual to see, which is what heroes should be. And that's why Clint, again, can't be a murderer. I wouldn't be surprised if that guy in Avengers Endgame wasn't mortally wounded. He's fine. I'm sure maybe someday we'll have a shot and he's like, thanks for turning my life around, Hawkeye. All right, so anyway. Clint, for instance, Kate, for instance, likes to tease Clint, and she's very good at it. The Hawkeye versus Hawkeye joke was very funny. She's particularly good at texting. Like when, last week when she said the thing about, we all know you don't have any friends. She kids because she loves. But she's never mean. She's never out. I mean, I guess some of those things seem a little mean with the no friends. But, she's not mean. Hollywood often likes to make particularly female characters mean to make them funny. It's a pet peeve of mine. But I love that Kate is a nice, kind person. She has plenty of opportunities to make fun of Clint with his hearing problems during the chase sequence and after that. But instead, she's incredibly understanding, positive, and compassionate. Her interpreting Clint's phone call with his son, who, by the way, I don't know why his son doesn't know how to text, which is weird considering most kids start using phones these days when they're babies and prefer texting. Very few people actually talk on the phone anymore, right? One of my favorite Jerry Seinfeld bits is like, who dares call us these days, right? Just text. And by the way, his son knows that his dad has hearing issues and has been practicing sign language. But anyway, it was early in the morning. He just wanted to talk. But that was a double gut punch for Clint. Not only could he not hear his son's voice, which is very sad, but he said that he could. He's a good bluffer, as I said during the watch along. He's like, good to hear your voice, son. And you're like, you can't hear it. Oh my God. But Clint's missing a whole lot of Christmas. And he might miss actual Christmas with the way that he won't miss actual Christmas. He'll be home for Christmas. But anyway, that was a very emotional scene. I like that. Remember, family is very important to Clint, as I talked about last week, especially after Natasha sacrificed herself so he could be with his family. And as some of you pointed out, Nathaniel is the one named after Nat. The feels. I also liked his reasoning for not getting a fancy costume, especially number 2, his wife would divorce him. No, she wouldn't, but Linda Cardellini sure would have a good laugh. And I like that, of course, Kate's illustration was actually based off some of the looks he's had in the comics in his earlier days. Hey, it was a different time. It is interesting to think about how Clint and Nat might have been Avengers, technically, but on the Nick Fury side of things. They were his operatives, and they weren't meant to be part of the big show. And I think that secrecy is part of what made them so close, and that Clint, of course, recruited her. I'm still bummed that we never got to see them have an adventure, just the two of them, except, their final adventure. I still would have liked to have seen that. It's never too late for more flashback, maybe, please. I still want to see that. Another favorite moment when Clint admits that Kate is one of the world's best archers. He didn't have to do that, and he didn't have to do it so earnestly. He could have done it snarky, talking about, mean funny. That was, again, very kind, which is another reason that Nat might have clicked with him, right? And how he was able to reach Wanda. He's a port of kindness in a storm of cruelty for both those women, both those Eastern European women. It's tough over there. Sam, by the way, is also very kind. I mean, all Avengers have their moments, but Sam and Clint, and I think Kate, are particularly kind. You want to be a Hawkeye? You got to be nice. Isn't that nice? All right, let's go over the trick arrows. In the comics, Clint is always looking for tape to indeed label them. So this is an ongoing problem for him. Although that Pym Arrow is pretty easy to identify. And again, extreme CGI during this sequence. So we start off with the goop arrow, which I thought was surprisingly effective, even if she didn't use them to shoot out the tires, which is what Clint said, she should have done. The timing obviously was a little off because he couldn't hear. I liked it. It made it a fair fight with the tracksuit mafia. But purple goo. Branding, I mean, maybe if just the goo had been purple, you would think it was a happy accident. But with the smoke also purple, He cares a little about branding. That's a choice. Then next we have the explosion arrow, pretty standard. Then the suction cup arrow, very good setup for the train. Let's come back to that literally in a moment. Then the net arrow. I'm not quite sure what to call that. I'm curious to see how that arrow is supposed to be used. And so is Kate, and she wants to know what the name of it is. I want to know too. That was kind of cool. Acid arrows, very self-explanatory, but also extremely CGI. Like, whoa. And I still don't understand what was the point of taking out the traffic lights. I mean, maybe to stop the other cars so they were safe. The smoke arrow, also, so again, very purple, but also very CGI. That's not real smoke. That's not real smoke. They're like, we can't do purple smoke. You're like, really? In 2021 or 2020, whenever you shot this? Then we had the Pym Arrow, which looks very cool. The Pym Technologies knows about branding. The USB Arrow, which of course is a callback to What If. That was very fun to see. And then I didn't realize when she's covering for him with the USB arrow that he had to go back and pick up some arrows, which is hilarious. It reminds me of that great Saturday Night Live sketch from when the first Avengers movie came out, when Hawkeye said, "Hey, I ran out of arrows. Can I go back to the Quinjet or to the car?" I loved that gag. That's so funny. And they're like, "Can't you just get some of the other arrows?" And he's like, "That's unsanitary." It's a great sketch. It's really funny. But this is kind of like a fun acknowledgement of that. And so he had to go back and get that suction cup arrow. I thought that was very clever. I wish they'd made that more clear. Then I thought maybe he had to fire 2 arrows, but in fact the bow itself has the grappling hook, which makes sense because then you can still fire arrows while you're swinging. Or in this case, he just used it old school, like an actual plunger to stick to the top of the train. So I think that Hawkeye is very cool, and he had that cool shot in the beginning when, I don't know why he had to stay on top of, I thought the action sequence in the beginning was a little lame within the toy warehouse. But he still had that one cool shot when he, did that kind of like roll. That was neat. But overall, I think that they should make it a little clearer how cool he is, because I think it's getting lost on us. Oh yeah, and Pizza Dog got his name. Although I thought that Kate had some very good options there. I thought Little Caesar was pretty funny. I wonder how much they had to pay for that joke. They're like, we can only use it once, so we can't actually settle on that. So that's episode 3. I mean, Pizza Dog, of course, is his. Well, it's Lucky actually from the comics, but I thought I like Pizza Dog better. So anyway, that's episode 3. I think I would enjoy it more if there were more episodes overall. Again, this is like, we know the clock is ticking, sand is running through the hourglass. I feel like, I don't know if the 45 minutes or so was the best it could have been spent. But I still had a good time. And again, I think they need to make it clear how awesome Hawkeye's moves are. Jeremy Renner, very good at action, very good at the acting as well, good at the drama, which of course he's an Oscar-nominated actor. It's easy to forget that because he doesn't do a lot of that kind of work anymore. But Steinfeld, Hailee Steinfeld, she's a great action actress. She's very good. She doesn't get enough credit for being a really good action star. She's excellent. So I'm so glad she's part of the MCU. Come on, young Avengers! I think she'll be leading them. It was her and Patriot. They actually had a little bit of a flirtation. I'm rereading the Hawkeye comic, and they had a really great flashback story that was in there with some really great art. Go pick that up. Also, by the way, Comixology, if you get Comixology Unlimited, it's like $5 a month, and the Hawkeye first 2 trades are free, are part of that subscription. So you can read them both for $5. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. All right, so anyway, share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.